This is where the lawn tractor broke down on me. All right, so this is the Craftsman. It's a Craftsman DYT 4000. Came with a 48-inch deck, and we've got a 42-inch snowblower attachment on the front of it. When this thing works, it works beautifully. If you don't really care about the history of this thing and you just want me to eat the damn orange, you can skip to this timestamp. But let's kind of go through a little bit of this thing's past, and I will see you there. So my parents bought some land out in the country. They needed something big enough to mow all of it, so they bought this. And we abused the hell out of it. 17-year-old me, I'm going through grass that's like up to here, and I'm going full speed no matter how thick it is, and I'm going through wet grass and marshland. I didn't think about it. It's a lawnmower. It mows the lawn. Unsurprisingly, the thing kept overheating. We get too much dead grass up in the engine area. It would overheat. Then it would throw push rods. We went through many push rods, and we just kept throwing parts at it until eventually the thing got too worn out, and we had to buy a whole new engine for it after 4 or 5 years. The new engine we took better care of. We actually cleared the dead grass out of it, so it lasted quite a bit longer. So fast forward a couple of years, I've moved out, my dad passes away, and my mom cannot get the hang of the controls on this. She's 4'11", so every time she tries to use this lever to raise and lower the snowblower, she lifts off the seat and the engine shuts off as a safety measure. She doesn't like the control back here for the forward and back because she's so far forward. She just parks us in the backyard. She can't deal with this one. She gets a Cub Cadet with adjustable seats and foot-operated controls that works out much better for her. So I've got a pretty wide driveway by city standards. My driveway and my neighbor's driveway butt right up to each other. So it's a decent area to have to clear out. And I asked my mom, hey, this is sitting in the backyard. Can I take it and fix it up? And of course she's like, yeah, go for it. So I bring a trailer down. I give this thing a couple cranks just to, I knew it wasn't going to start. It had been sitting for years. But I just wanted to see what would happen if I tried cranking it. I took the air filter assembly off. There were a couple mice in there that were not too thrilled. But I get the thing loaded up on the trailer, I bring it home, and I start fixing it up. We got some inner tubes in the tires. I gave it a really crappy paint job with Rust-Oleum that's now flaking off. Slapped a couple stickers on her because this sticker is long gone. Like that, you're not finding that anywhere. I was hoping to fix this lens, but I gave it a little spray of bug spray. It cleared it up for a little bit, then it yellowed again. There's a street light across the street. I really don't need the light, so I'm not going to bother with that. I had a plan to 3D print a clear one. That didn't work. Even though I got this thing up and running, it would work fine during summer. It wouldn't work during winter. There was always something going wrong. Sometimes, even though I'm only running ethanol-free fuel and stabilizer, the rubber fuel lines would rot. During winter, you take the gas cap off to get some more gas in there. Snow's going to fall in because it's actively snowing as you're snow blowing. Well, now you got water in the line, and the ISO heat can only do so much, and I never know how much to add. The belts always give me a headache because they have a really tight path where it goes up, twist, 180, twist again, then back. And nobody can agree on whether you should use the factory 5/8 width belt for strength or the thinner 1/2 inch width belt for flexibility. Either way, it's a 114-inch length belt. You're not finding that in town. Even at Fleet Farm. Fleet Farm doesn't carry anything anymore. For some reason, I never just spent the $40 on a new battery and kept using old batteries and trickle chargers and a mounted trickle charger on the other side. Last year, I finally bought a new battery for it. But by far, the carburetor has been the biggest pain in the ass. There's always sludge in it. There's rust. The little shut-off solenoid on it always wants to stick. There's a little rubber gasket in the carburetor bowl that it's just an O-ring, but it's a very specific size that you cannot find normally. And for some reason, every time I take the carburetor apart, that ring is destroyed. It can't go anywhere, so I don't know why it keeps deforming like that. Sometimes there'll be slushy in there, and sometimes it's just rusty water. There's always something happening with the carb. I'm sick of taking the carburetor off this thing to clean it. I did buy a replacement carb, but it was a Chinese knockoff. So it was really poorly made, and mixing matching parts just made it that much worse. So it never ran reliably. So last fall, I'm getting this thing ready for winter again. It's still giving me trouble. I don't want to deal with the carburetor on this anymore. The solenoid valve on it keeps sticking and loose connections. I just don't know anymore. I'm getting sick of it. So I take a look on Marketplace. Like, can I get a whole replacement carburetor? If I buy one brand new, it's like $200, and that's quite a bit for something like this when you could buy entire ones of these running for $350. But there's someone that has a whole engine for parts, $100. He said it was running. The PTO clutch bearing on his equipment froze. It threw a push rod, and he's pretty sure it broke the camshaft. And I'm like, hey, $100 for a genuine carb in a known running condition. The whatever broke, but that's not going to affect the carb at all. And that way I'll also have a bunch of spare parts. I'll have spark plugs. And so I picked it up, I brought it home, I started tearing it apart to see how bad the damage was, and it was in better shape than this engine. Not only that, it was damn near the same engine. Like, the engine codes were off by just 2 characters, most of that being because mine was a Briggs branded one, this was a John Deere branded one, and everything looked great on it. I mean, look at this cross-hatching. That is really good cross-hatching for a 20-year-old engine. So I put a new push rod in, I get it all back together, I get it cleaned up, I fire it up, it runs perfectly fine. I'm getting 140 PSI both cylinders. So you know what? It's not a parts engine anymore. It is the engine. I'm kind of hoping that this air filter assembly is a little more resistant to mice, because the old assembly, really, there was always mice in it. Even though I'm in the city, every spring, mice would get into it. Every fall, I'd have to evict them and take this whole thing apart to clean the mice out. That too, the mice had chewed up the ignition coil wires, and always something. Last time I needed to use this thing, it started, it ran, I was able to clear a little bit of snow before it died, and it wouldn't crank, it wouldn't run the fuel pump. Did a little poking around, the ignition switch was fine, and there's a fuse down in here, just a regular, the kind you use in cars, an automotive fuse. I think this wire shorted out, and it blew the fuse, so I replaced the fuse, I protected that wire. It would crank, but I didn't get any fuel pump, which the fuel pump is connected to the leads that the thing comes with for an hour meter, which this didn't have an hour meter. There's 12 volts at the lead for the fuel pump, but the fuel pump's not running, so I guess the fuel pump died. I go grab a spare, pop her on there, it runs. I start driving it back, because by this point my neighbor already took care of all the snow, and it stumbles, it dies. There was a bad connection at fuel pump, and the other leads connect. Cut it off, put some Waggles in, started, it ran, I backed it up to where it goes, and it died right where you saw it in the intro shot. The fuse is still okay, but no crank, no fuel pump, nothing. Not even a little bit. So we're looking at it again today to see what the hell is wrong with it this time. All right, guys, let's start by getting this snowblower out of our way, because the camera's probably going to keep trying to focus on that. Oh, that was the wrong one. Yeah, that belt's getting chewed up already. Go, damn it. Okay. Way more difficult than that needed to be. I guess let's just start with the obvious here and check voltages. Battery's 12.7, that sounds pretty good. So now at the fuel pump, I should get 12 volts when I turn the ignition on, but I do not. What happens if I play around with the ignition switch wiring? Nothing. And if it's just a loose connection on the battery, I'm going to be pretty mad. No, still doesn't seem to be the case. Right, you can see the annoying rat's nest of wires going on in here, including this white wire that I think shorted. Like, you can kind of tell, I don't know if you can, but it clearly hasn't been connected to anything in a while. Here is the fuse, which this fuse should be okay. This fuse is not okay. I mean, that's a 30. I want a 30. Okay, I don't have another 20 handy, but I got a 7.5 and a 30, but let's do the 7.5. Huh? For Christ's sake, you can hear the solenoid going. All right, new fuse. I swear to God, I looked at the fuse before, and it looked fine. Now it doesn't. Now we're getting voltage. Is that all it was? Again, well, I don't know why it's blowing fuses. And this fuel pump's not running either, even though there should be 12 volts in there. Yeah, so this fuel pump decided it wanted to go out too, I guess. So something is happening to make these fuel pumps go out, which in turn blows that fuse. But the first fuel pump ran for like 2 or 3 years without a problem. Then it died, and apparently took the fuse out with it. And now this replacement one ran for 30 seconds and must have died and taken the fuse out with it. Is it something else is shorting, and when it shorts, it destroys this? Or is this just going bad on its own and taking the fuse with it? I mean, I could put the original mechanical fuel pump back on, but I really like having this electric one, especially for draining it at the end of the season. I don't think anything will happen if I just give it a little percussive. You know, a good... No, that didn't work. What's the problem here? So right now, it should at least be able to try to crank, even though there's no fuel pump. Yeah? So what the hell's going on with these fuel pumps? And I guess, do I just leave this thing until I get a new one, or do I put the mechanical one back in? And I do have to reroute this fuel line back where it belongs. I just kind of yanked that thing out and let it droop down along the ground when the fuel line froze on me. Just why? I already threw out the original one of these. Do I put the mechanical one back in, or do I get more electric ones? Because if I get a new electric one, I can just put it right in, but how long will it last? If I put the mechanical one back in, I'm going to have to swap out this valve cover, because one valve cover normally has a little nipple coming out of it for the vacuum to run the thing. I took a cover off each of the engines that I had so that I wouldn't have any of those. I'm sure this is going to look really terrible from your perspective, but there is a wire-nutted wire here with some copper exposed. And it's actually nutting something together. I just don't know what. I'm sure that's important in some way. I guess I'll take this apart and take a look. It's not going to fix the fuel pump, but at the very least, that might be something shorting out. Yeah, this is just a mess. You can see this wire. I mean, it's connected to 12 volt, and this little red wire goes to, I don't even know what. I think it comes up here. I'm just going to disconnect that. That should be the starting solenoid now that I think about it. So you got 12 volts coming from the battery, 12 volts going out to the starter, and then this would be the coil that runs it. I don't know why I'm mentioning this, since this has nothing to... it does have something to do with that. So this is 12 volts going to somewhere. That's an unfused 12 volts right there. Because at least, yeah, there's... If this shorts against the body, there's no protection on that. So I do have a wiring diagram for this. It's a bit all over the place because they wanted to have everything be on one page. So that wire goes right to the fuse holder, which goes up to the amp meter. The amp meter then goes to, I'll have to check the wiring diagram for that. I think it just then goes to the ignition switch. That's really bad condition. Let's see if you can see that. Can you see that? Maybe. I assume that runs all the accessories. When I was playing around with that connection before, I was playing with the PTO, not the actual ignition switch. But yeah, it goes up to the ignition switch. So I gotta fix this. All right, I'm sure there's something useful in here. Well, luckily I had a couple stake-ons in the basement, because almost all of my stake-ons are in my work truck, which is at the shop getting new tires put on it right now. So, yeah, this is pretty well planned out, wasn't it? Let's look at electrical issues when half my electrical equipment is not here. Let's give that a little snip. Point to no return. Well, yeah. You're not really gonna be able to see as I do that, are you? Okay. Those are pretty good and snug. I still don't know what the deal is with this. Like under this electrical tape that I applied really poorly because it was actively snowing out. The wire is shorted, looks like it was rubbing against that. I don't know. I also kind of wish I could, just put that somewhere accessible like that. I do like that. All right, I pop the fuse in, shouldn't blow. Ignition on, we should hear that solenoid click. Yes. And it should attempt to crank. Ooh. Hey. Is it just that I have a really poor connection on there? Yeah, I just had a really bad connection because I didn't put the nut on. That was good for it. But you know what? She'll start once I tighten that down a little better. I do wish there was a fuse connection coming off the battery. I probably could. But now I can get to this a little better. You know what? Let's just put the mechanical fuel pump back on this thing. Get this thing so it'll run. Half the reason why I had the electric fuel pump put on it was because I kept not putting good batteries on it, so it would crank too slow to get fuel up to the carburetor. God forbid I just buy the correct parts, do this stuff right the first time. Yeah, I do have to wonder if this wire just goes to here, which is for an option this engine doesn't have. So let me try wringing that out, and then I'll... Yeah, so it doesn't matter if this shorts out or not. That's not going anywhere. It's for some feature this engine doesn't have that the other one didn't have either. Yeah, I guess let's put the mechanical fuel pump back on and fix this gas line just dangling. Okay. A little bit of junk in there. That was pretty cool. Yeah, I don't know why this isn't working. No. Looks a little dirty in there. Whatever that was inside the inlet and the other side. This thing, is this gonna be full of spiders? First off, make sure I got the correct one. It does look to be so, but not actually run this stuff into the carburetor right away. All right, let's see what happens. First off, should give her a little test crank. Yep. Yeah, it's not drawing anything. I don't know if this is bad, but let me go look for the other one. I don't know where any of my fuel pumps are. I can find this one and the electric one. I should have two more of these. The one that was on this engine when I got it, and the one that was on the old engine before I took it off, put the electric one on, plus a replacement one I bought at one point, but I can't find them. I did find this switch, and like someday I'd like to replace the ignition switch with this guy. So you got off, on, start, and a light to let me know if the ignition is working. Well, there's a 24 volt light in it. I don't know if it'll work with 12. So the big question, will a 24 volt light work with 12 volts? The answer may surprise you. Hey! It's not super bright, but I could live with that. Nice way to know if ignition's okay. And just because that's, yep. Yeah, that wasn't on very tight. I was not getting a draw because of that. Yeah, no. All right, I'm gonna look around a bit, I guess, or possibly have to order another part to finish that up, but I'll get the fuel line back where it needs to be. Oh, that's just gonna drain the entire fuel tank, isn't it? How much fuel's in the fuel tank? There's a lot of fuel in the fuel tank. The gas looks okay-ish. Shoot. Can I rub the whole thing pinched off like this? As soon as I remember where it goes. Now, one of the things you should check beforehand, but I didn't. I feel like there was, I don't remember. Maybe it did just come up in there. Oh, my fingers aren't cooperating right now. I'm good at my job. I can't get my fingers through the thing while still pinching it. Okay. In there. Yeah, we'll just go with that. Well, you know what? Just for giggles, let's go ahead, slap some hot glue on this light. So we can at least say we did something today. Hot glue on the light. Stick the light up there. And now I've got a light. And that, amazing. All right, so I don't know why I can't find any more fuel pumps for this in my garage anywhere. I wouldn't have thrown it out because I never really trusted the electric one to begin with, and I never throw anything out. I mean, let's go up to the attic. Let's take a look. I mean, look at all this. We got taillights for a Prius. We don't have a Prius, and these lights were bad anyway. That's why we replaced them. The original lumbar adjustments for the Flex. The broken four-wheel drive for my neighbor's truck. A radio for a 2010 Fusion that had a bad firmware update on it, or map update. So half the voice commands don't work properly anymore, and I don't have that car anymore. sill plates for the flex, a bunch of casters and stuff of shop vac I don't have anymore, sway bar links. This is either for the Bronco or for my work truck. The original mirrors for the Bronco. So this is the box of stuff that I kept for the lawnmower. We got a belt, clutch assembly, or not the clutch assembly. This is the part that goes to the choke and the throttle and all that. Push rod, a bad voltage regulator, gaskets and baskets, the other cover with the straight bit, like I said, gasket, the shitty knockoff Chinese carb that didn't work very well and has really bad casting. Another belt, the worn out pulley assembly. That's supposed to be a circle, not an egg. That's why we always had a bungee cord on the clutch for the longest time till I finally replaced it. Float bowl, and you can see that's kind of dirty, and this was acting up. Another push rod, an empty bag, mower. It's not a PCV valve, but it has to do with clutch spring, one reflector. I think the other one fell off at some point. More carb parts, lamp that goes in there. Yeah, the fuel pump should be in this box. It's not in this box. So I guess I'll put this back together and get this out of the garage before my wife gets home and asks why the hell the garage smells like gasoline. And I'll order a new pump. Alright, you know what? I was just kidding before. The fuel pump came faster than I thought it would. So this is back in the garage, and let's get the new fuel pump put on. First things first, let's get the snowblower out of the way again. Beautiful. Alright, now the hood. Get rid of this. How did fuel get up there? Now, hopefully this should bolt right into that same spot. And hopefully that doesn't stick out too far. I didn't think about that. It doesn't quite reach the other side, but for the time being, we'll see what happens if I just go like this. All right, hopefully that's not too far out. And off camera, I did make a wiring harness for this. I don't like that the power wires coming in are at the top. That's not really good for drainage. But let's see what she does. All right. Yeah, that's fuel. Now, will the hood go back on, or am I going to need to get a different fitting for right here? And we have to make a new bracket anyway because it doesn't reach the other hole, or probably just drill a new hole in this. You can't see it, it's tight, but it does kind of clear. Not great. I mean, really, I could mount this somewhere else entirely. Maybe. There's not really a good spot for it, is there? Because I'm not going to put it like there. Well, you know what? I'm just going to leave it for now. Maybe I'll deal with it sometime during the summer, but it should start and run, so let's put this thing back together. Alright, she should fire right up now. Beautiful. So, we'll see how long she runs this time. Yeah, didn't even make it out of the garage. So. Alright, now we've got the symptom a little more figured out. If the engine is revved up and you shut it off using the ignition switch, it will blow the fuse. If it's at an idle or if you use the seat switch, it doesn't. I already tried replacing the regulator, so it's gotta be the ignition switch, which unfortunately I don't have a spare ignition switch. I did talk about using that selector switch, but I have to get a normally closed contact if I want to use that. So I'll just rev the thing down or use the seat switch to kill it for the time being. Well, that about does it. So, sorry you just watched me mess around with this thing for the past half an hour.